carbon dioxide. Between 3 to 6% of greenhouse gas emissions in the US originate from landfills in the first place. And this is just so tragic and stupid on so many levels. One, because yeah, it's producing this methane gas, it's creating a justification for making new landfill space, and it's absolutely squandering a resource, which is all this organic matter, whether it's food waste, or wood chips, or brown leaves, or grass clippings, all this stuff that's just getting thrown in the dump every day, which is exactly the material we need to be intercepting and diverting from the landfill, bringing back into the urban core and composting it, and turning it into soil that are going to create the gardens of the future that are going to sustain human populations in cities in the years to come. Our current system of mechanized agriculture is massively dependent upon the continued availability of cheap petroleum inputs. Everything from planting seeds to harvesting them to the applications of pesticides and fertilizers, let alone putting the stuff in trucks and transporting it across continents to bring into cities, requires enormous amounts of petroleum fuel. Right now, gas is relatively cheap, but over the summer it certainly wasn't, and it is going to go back up. And the price, due to supply and demand issues, is going to continue to increase, which is going to make it essential to relocalize food production back into urban areas. So that's why we put a lot of emphasis on creating urban farms, on creating CSAs, or what are known as community-supported agriculture systems. And we can do this by composting it. Because, through natural processes, soil forms very slowly. It takes many years for even so much as 1 inch of soil to form. But by taking that material and composting it and turning it to dirt, you can greatly speed up that process. So, definitely big advocates of that. Examples here just of all the food. We need to be the crows. We need to act like the crows who do the job of recycling all those nutrients and keeping them out of the ground. Here's just an image. This is a photo taken in Manhattan of people who have created this beautiful verdant garden on the roof of a building. Building green roofs are something that people have been talking a lot about lately, and they're actually kind of tricky because most buildings are not structurally capable of taking the weight of several inches of wet earth. But however, it's just to demonstrate the potential of unused spaces in the urban environment for food production. So one of my favorite methods of intensive food production is something called aquaculture. And this is something I geek out really hard on. Basically what it is the production of aquatic plants and animals for the purpose of making food and fuel and fertilizer. Why is this something that's desirable for the urban environment? Well, basically where you have water and you have sunlight and you have nutrients, things grow incredibly prolifically and fast. Estuaries and swamps, estuaries are the ecosystems that exist between freshwater and marine environments. They are right up there with rainforests as being the most productive types of ecosystems. You will produce more calories in an acre of an estuary than you will in the most productive organic farm. Look at population settlements of people on this continent prior to European arrival, centered around rivers, coastals, waterways, to take advantage of the amazing abundance of those regions. Unfortunately, what we've done is locate our industrial centers along these same places and have poisoned these environments. So much to the point where we have to put limits on the number of certain species of fish that we can even eat during a lifetime because of how many PCBs or mercury they may have accumulated inside themselves. But still, the world relies on fish for 1/3 of its protein intake. And the way we're harvesting fish right now is entirely unsustainable. We're basically vacuuming the oceans. And a study has recently come out that said if we continue on this current trajectory, we're looking at total collapse of global oceanic fisheries by the year 2048. But fortunately, Fortunately, there is a way that you can be raising fish or aquatic plants, edible aquatic plants, which there are many of, in your backyard that is both sustainable and guaranteed to give you clean, healthy food products as well. Probably the simplest way that you can do that is to take just a kiddie pool, like a little plastic kiddie pool, and stick it in your backyard, fill it up with water, throw a couple fish in there, and boom, there you go, that's your entry level. This right here is, this is a little more complex. We took a metal stock tank, and what we did is we took metal 55-gallon barrels and cut them in half, and plumbed them all into the central tank so that the fish and the different critters and the organisms and the systems can all swim back and forth and find their ideal little niche. And it's producing food on a three-dimensional level, on not only the horizontal axis of the pond, but the vertical axis as well. So again, another example of taking advantage of vertical space. That's a later version of it. This right here is one of my favorite plants. It's called Duckweed. And it's actually a tiny little 3-leaf floating plant, much smaller than the photograph right here, that under optimal conditions is capable of doubling its mass every other day or so. It's native to pretty much most parts of the Americas that I know, and has a protein structure that is actually closer to an animal protein than it is to a vegetable protein. So perfectly edible for humans. You can steam it, you can dehydrate it. It sort of has like a sprouty kind of flavor to it. You can feed it to chickens, you can feed it to fish, you can compost it. This is about as close as we can get to what's called primary production as possible. The basic photosynthetic unit that's still readily identifiable with the eyeball. I mean, there's things that are smaller, like microalgae, but it's very difficult to distinguish toxic from non-toxic varieties without a microscope, and you would waste a lot of time separating them with a pair of tweezers under a microscope. This, however, you could look at and know quite for certain what it is. And, you know, when we talk a lot about eating close to the bottom of the food chain. This is really about as close to the bottom as you can get, and still have it be reasonably palatable. So, I'm all about duckweed. Cattails, another fabulous plant. You see this all over the place. It grows in roadside dishes. Just about every part of this plant is edible. The roots, sort of like a starchy potato tuber. The little green shoots on the leaves in the spring. Even the brown fuzzy thing on top, you can eat that. And there's actually been a lot of interesting research done lately about using the tuber as a stock for producing ethanol on a very small, sustainable scale, because it is something that, for most people, is almost a nuisance plant because it grows so prolifically in so many areas. This is a dragonfly larvae, which is something we definitely like to encourage the presence of in a pond system, because it's sort of like the ultimate predator of the aquatic insect world. It just particularly hunts mosquito larvae. And if you're going to have a pond, you have to do something to prevent mosquitoes from growing in it, because otherwise you're going to have just a biological disaster on your hand, and your neighbors will hate you, and you will be miserable yourself. So encouraging dragonflies to come, even introducing goldfish, they'll do an enormous job just in themselves. And building bat houses. This is a great thing for urban residents to do, is put bat houses on the sides of their buildings, because a single bat is capable of eating many, many mosquitoes within an hour. If you ever come to Austin, we are actually known for having the largest urban bat colony in North America. The I-35 bridge that goes over the Colorado River has these little slats in the bottom of it, and if you go there around sundown in the warm months, the sky just turns black as these bats just dump out, and they swoop up and down the river and eat mosquitoes. Which is actually something that was done intentionally around the turn of the century. They built giant bat towers as a way to combat malaria and yellow fever, which were endemic in the area. And really only due to the fact that our government sprays massive amounts of pesticides to keep these mosquito-borne diseases in check, are they not present right now? And were there to be a lapse in those applications, those diseases could return. So we would need to preventing mosquito bites would be more than an issue of comfort. Let's just jump ahead a little bit here.